Hi, my name is Lisa, and in this presentation I'm going to give an evaluation of Flipgrid. I'll be focusing on four main areas. First, I'm going to give a brief overview of the technology itself. Then I'm going to be taking a closer look at ICT theories and models. Be looking also at Flipgrid and communicative language teaching, and Flipgrid and assessment. So to begin with, I'm going to say something about what Flipgrid actually is. Flipgrid is a website that allows teachers to create discussion forums. And these discussion forums are called grids in Flipgrid. Now, these grids can either be on themes or, for example, for a class. And these are just some examples of grids that I've made with my students. Each grid then can consist of several different topics, and the topic can be just a discussion question, or it can be a learning resource. So, for example, in this topic, I have added not only a discussion question, but also videos and different resources such as links to websites and the text for the students to read on the topic itself. Once this topic is active online, the students can then go onto the topic, and by pressing that big green button, they can record their response or reply to the topic question. That big green button then launches the web camera and microphone, so they can start recording instantly. They can do this either on the computer or on mobile phones. They can also pre-record a video if they prefer, and just upload it to the grid. And they can add fun features to the videos, such as stickers and tags and backgrounds. Okay, I will now be taking a closer look at Flipgrid in light of different ICT theories and models. So why use technology in the English language classroom? Well, Dudney Hockley and Peregrine point out in the book Digital Literacies that we are preparing students for a future that we really don't know that much about. And even if we can't predict what jobs or professions are going to exist in the future, we can predict that ICT and technology definitely is going to be a part of that. Neil Selwyn in the same book speaks about external and internal imperatives for using technology. Now, the external imperatives would be the outside world and what kind of skills are necessary for being successful both personally and professionally in the outside world. So technology would be a part of that, and we can see this represented, for example, in the English subject curriculum, where digital tools have been incorporated into the curriculum itself, such as, for example, as one of the 5 basic skills, where the use of digital tools for authentic use of English and in additional forms of communication and learning arenas. Also, if we go to more specific goals for example, international English, a subject that I teach, you can see specific goals where they mention digital tools for communication and presentation. Now, the internal imperatives would be why you should use technology to improve what's going on in the classroom itself. And to evaluate that, I think the SAMR model is very useful. The SAMR model was developed by Pentadora, and it can easily be used to evaluate any kind of technology. And if we look at Flipgrid using the SAMR model, the first level is substitution. And Flipgrid is basically a substitution for the classroom discussion. And if you use it just on this level, it basically means that you move the discussion from the classroom setting itself into an online forum with videos. Now, the next level is augmentation, where technology is a substitution, but it also adds additional improvements. So at this level, you could argue that Flipgrid provides opportunities for all students to participate in the discussion at the same time, and also that you could have several discussions on different topics happening at the same time. If we move on to the next level, which is modification, this is where you move from enhancement into the transformation of the classroom. So modification allows for redesign or task redesign. So I would argue that the asynchronicity of the discussion, the fact that you can go back to the discussion and continue the discussion in at different times is a modification. Flipgrid also allows for considerable more time for reflection for my students before they reply, so they can actually plan ahead how to reply to the different discussion threads. So this would also be a modification. Also, the possibility that they can revisit and rework their previous submissions is a modification. If we look at the final level, this is redefinition, and this is where technology allows for creation of new tasks and allows for you to do things in the classroom that you couldn't do before. So the fact that Flipgrid posts discussions online allows for others to participate in the classroom discussion. And with that, I mean people who are not part of the class. So you could actually have a discussion with students anywhere in the world on any topic. And this is something that we haven't necessarily been able to do before. And I would consider it a redefinition of the task. So the TPACK model, or TPACK, is a model that can help you integrate technology in a good way into your classroom practices. And this model is divided into 3 different areas. You have your content knowledge, which is your knowledge of English and the English curriculum. You have your pedagogical knowledge, which is your knowledge of theories and methods for teaching and learning. And then your technological knowledge, which is your knowledge of technology and different ICT tools. Now, as you can see, this model has several points of overlap where, for example, you have your pedagogical content knowledge, which would be your knowledge on how to best present material for a group of students, or your technological pedagogical knowledge, which would then be what kind of tools support which kind of teaching methods. And your technological content knowledge is also how to, for example, support the content with the use of ICT. Now, the overlapping bit, which is all the way in the middle here, is where you have your technological, pedagogical and content knowledge. And this basically concerns the ability to integrate all these elements in a way that enhances learning. So, for example, with regards to Flipgrid, for example, it would mean then how to both include the contents that students are required to work with in a pedagogical manner, which then supports and promotes learning, and using ICT in a way that doesn't distract from the content and the pedagogy, but instead enhances it and supports it. Moving on to Flipgrid and communicative language teaching. The communicative approach is all about communication, and communication in a way becomes both the means by which you learn English, but also the goal of learning English. The screenshot that I've included here is a screenshot of something called Grid Pals in Flipgrid. This is basically a communication or community of classrooms, and These are classrooms who wish to collaborate with other people anywhere in the world, and my students can then connect to classrooms, for example, in the United States, in the UK, or in Australia, and work on projects and discussions with them. We can also connect to, as you can see, other communities or classrooms who don't necessarily have English as the native language, but are learners of English, like my students are. So this would be a way to emphasize communication and to allow for my students to practice their English and learn English through participating in discussions with others. Finally, I'd like to say something about Flipgrid and assessment. Now, Flipgrid works as a digital log of student participation in various discussions. So I would argue that this enables a more objective assessment of students' communication. The fact that you can re-listen to student submissions and you have time to reflect more on the individual students' responses. Whereas in the classroom discussion, you are very often multitasking. You're moderating the discussion, you're driving the discussion forward, trying to make sure that as many students as possible participate. So the fact that you have a record of student participation means that you can provide more accurate and detailed feedback. Also, Flipgrid allows you to provide feedback in form of video feedback. So you have a tool here where you can add your private video feedback to that student. This would then become not open for everyone to see in the grid, but between you and that specific student. So that would be ways to assess, well, formally assess student work. You have also a lot of informal opportunities to give student feedback. For example, you can press likes, which then is just a quick way to show students that you've seen their response and basically given it a thumbs up. You could add vibes to a student's video. Or you could actually add it to a mixtape. Now, a mixtape would actually work as kind of like an area to showcase student work. So if a student has given a particularly good response, you could add it to the mixtape, which then would make it accessible for all classes and people outside of your Flipgrid. So these are just some of the ways you can give students feedback in Flipgrid. So in my final conclusion, I would argue that Flipgrid has the potential to improve the language classroom. The technology itself is very easy to use, and it's easily integrated with other technology such as Teams, which we use in our school, but it's also easily shared across platforms such as Facebook, Twitter and Google. Flipgrid also has a very good app for mobile phones, which is easy to use, and all of these are kind of features that we expect of today's tools, and this makes it easier to use and easier to share Flipgrid. Even so, Flipgrid offers many opportunities for my students to communicate in English, both with native speakers and other language learners. It is, however, asynchronous, and this means that students can plan, retake and perhaps even script responses to discussions. So it doesn't completely replace live discussions in the classroom, which is a different kind of language use. So I wouldn't recommend that you only use Flipgrid, but I would recommend that you use both Flipgrid and classroom discussions. So these are the sources that I used to prepare this presentation, and I'd like to just conclude with saying thank you for your attention.